Hi, I'm Summer, and welcome to Where the Ramp Ends. Today's episode is about introductions, specifically introducing you to my co host, Bryce. Bryce is a certified life coach, a certified public speaker, and has a degree in enterprise development from Oklahoma State University. But more than credentials, he brings thoughtfulness, accountability, and a grounded perspective to conversations around disability, advocacy, family, and the systems that shape our lives. This podcast exists because we believe better conversations create better understanding. And today is about connection, not teaching. So before we go any further, Bryce, who are you really?
Well, thank you for the question, Summer, and I am so excited to start this journey with you. I am a 28-year-old man that lives with cerebral palsy. I had a level 1 grade bleed at birth, which is the lowest grade bleed that you can have. It landed directly into my motor skills, which my doctor said that if it would have landed 1 degree to the left or 1 degree to the right, probably nothing would have happened, but since it landed directly into my motor skills, it put me in this wonderful chair. Now, growing up, I had a wonderful support system, a mom and a dad that really pushed for my own advocacy and independence. I also have a twin brother who also pushed for my advocacy and independence. I always have felt that my mom and my dad had harder expectations on me because they knew that life wasn't going to be easy for me. So they always wanted me to go above and beyond what was asked of me. So, not necessarily so I could prove myself because I am enough, but they wanted to show people that I am more than my disability and that I was capable of more than my disability. In high school, I was a two-time academic All-American. I graduated with a 3.96 GPA in high
Wow.
school. I had a service dog for 13 years named Samson. He was the greatest thing that I was ever given. He taught me what it was like to advocate for myself because I took him to school, high school and college, and we both, you know, toured the campus for years, you know, just being sidekicks and being able to go all around Edmond and OKC and different places, you know, being best buds. And, that's one of the things that I really started advocating for, before I even knew what advocating was. I was advocating that, service dogs aren't supposed to be pet unless, they're not working or you ask. You
Right.
just, one of the biggest things that I struggled with in high school and in college is, you know, teachers would come up and just pet Samson, and I would say, "I'm sorry, he's working." And they'd be like, "Oh, he just looks like he needs love." And to be honest, what's funny, Summer, is the kids weren't the issue. It was the adult. And
The teachers.
yes, and having said that, I feel like in the world of disability advocacy and awareness, the children aren't the problem, it's the parents.
I agree.
So there's some correlation here that what we really we don't need to worry about integrating kids into the disability community because they're really receptive. They're like sponges. They can adapt to different mindsets and different behaviors and different surroundings. What we really need to focus on in life and in this podcast is really changing the framework of how parents perceive individuals with disabilities.
I agree 100%. I agree. That's one reason, like, I feel like children's books, like we've talked about children's books,
Yes,
because when kids check out a book about disabilities, then who has to read that to them?
right,
The parents.
right.
And so it's a good chance for parents and kids to learn about disability together.
And that's one of the things that, I'm so excited about is, when I was growing up, there weren't people with disabilities being championed on TV or any kind of platform. There wasn't social media yet. There was no Facebook. There was no Instagram. There was no TikTok. All of the things that were media related was on television, and there were no shows or movies championing people with disabilities unless they were highlighting the disability itself, and usually it was not in a positive way.
Right. Let Leading into that comment, what's something that people usually assume about you that's not true?
That I'm paralyzed, that I don't have any feeling from the waist down, that um they're shocked that when I do public speaking events or I've done training events that I'm the host or I'm the one teaching the class. They're like, "Oh, I'm looking for our instructor." And I kind of chuckle and I say, "Well, you're looking at him." And they're like, "Oh, okay." It's almost like they're stunned that somebody that is in a wheelchair would be qualified or want to do something like that.
How often do you say that happens?
My more often than I would like to admit. I can't give you a specific number, but more often than you'd like to admit. Um, and it's one of the things that I get all the time, or I have gotten all the time, is they'll ask my mom or my brother, in public, "Oh, can he have this?" And my mom or my brother will say, "He can speak for himself." Like, yeah,
Yes.
or at the 4th of July parade, I'll give you an example. This was a few years ago, but someone handed me a balloon, and I'm not sounding rude here, but it's like, I am a grown man. I mean, I appreciate the balloon, but you automatically assume that I'm not right upstairs. Like, I mean, I appreciate the gesture, but
Right. And I think that's something, like, automatically being treated as a child,
right,
and you're not a child.
right. Or I don't have a childlike mentality.
Find people even doing that to Julia. They'll talk to me instead of talking to her. And she's and I try to explain to people she can't understand you. The way she responds to you may be different,
Yes.
but, um
Like, this last year, I'll give you an example. This last year at the fair, in September, I had this random person come up to me and my mom and said, "Good for you for letting him come out, good for y'all." I'm like, and I really wanted to say, "What the hell?" Like,
wow.
I'm in a wheelchair, dude. I'm not incapable of going to the fair.
Wow.
Oh, I get those comments all the time like, "Good for you."
Well,
It's like
let's talk about surprising people. What's something about you that doesn't show up in your bio that people would be surprised about?
I'm a compe I'm a competitive video game player on my time off.
What peop Who knows that about you, and when do they usually find that out?
Um, that's one of the things that I love about competitive video game playing is they have no idea that I have a disability, so the playing field is level. Um, Now some of my closest friends that I've met gaming, I have friends all over the world, they know, but the average person doesn't know that I have cerebral palsy and that you know, am successful even though I have limited mobility in some of my hands, you know?
So that's a world you can exist in without the, um
Judgment, yes.
without the judgment and the misconceptions and everything bleeding into that world.
Correct. I'm judged based on my skills rather than my disability, which I mean, that's kind of why I gravitated towards that as a young person, even before online gaming, you know, became prevalent. That was something that I could, immerse myself in and be something that I wasn't. Um Same thing with reading, like, I love reading, that's another hobby that, not a lot of people know about me. I love immersing myself in, you know, learning. I love, immersing myself in different topics and figuring out why things are a thing.
So what kind of books do you usually read?
Usually, I'm a sucker for classic books like Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn. I love fantasy books like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. I love sports biographies. I love learning about people in general and why their stories are so meaningful.
So tell me a little bit about where you grew up and what you've kind of talked about this already, but what about the environment where you grew up at shaped you the most?
So I grew up in Edmond, Oklahoma. I graduated from Edmond Santa Fe in 2015. I grew up with two hardworking parents that really instilled in my brother and I that hard work is the only way to get anything in life. If if you are not hardworking and you don't put love into your work and love into your family, you're not going to get much out of life. My dad used to say when he was alive that you can't complain about your life unless you're willing to sit at the table and fight for what you're complaining about. You have no right.
If you get married and had kids, would you raise your kids the same way you were raised?
Oh, 100%. But here's the caveat with that. I feel like in society now, people have shied away from the old school Southern values that I was raised with, and I'm sure that you were raised with also. Yes, ma'am, yes, sir, opening doors for people, saying please and thank you. Those things have really dissipated nowadays. Now, am I saying that some of the things that I was raised with are a little bit old fashioned? Yes, but I also have learned a thing that really in society it's kind of lacking nowadays is respect for people and the respect for people's differences. I don't have to agree with everything somebody says, but I can respect it as long as you respect my viewpoints. You don't have to agree.
What did the experience of the way you were raised teach you about people?
Well, My mom always taught me that treat people how you want to be treated. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, purple, green, Asian, Mexican, as long as you're a good person and you're good to people, you can be my friend. Now, that doesn't always mean that they're going to be a good friend to you, but at least try to be their friend.
Have you always been a leadership kind of person, or did that come later in life?
More or less, that's kind of a loaded question because as a little kid, I always tried to lead by example, but as the social dynamic of high school begin to change and the friends that I had from age 4, started to not really hang out with me as much anymore and the depression and anxiety started to taper. I kind of for a while I was kind of kind of did things my own way. Like I still led in my own way, but it was kind of me trying to survive kind of thing.
So, who saw potential in you before you saw potential in you?
Goodness. I don't like to take credit for a lot of my accomplishments. I would say that the first person that really saw something in me and saw that I was special other than my mom was my grandmother. She always thought that I was incredibly open-minded and incredibly, you know, versatile for my age. I'm gonna share this story and you're gonna find this fascinating. When I was 8 years old, it was Christmas time, and my grandma asked me what I wanted for Christmas or a gift that I wanted for Christmas. And I said, I want the Webster's Dictionary. And you're probably thinking, what the heck does a 8-year-old want a college level Webster's Dictionary for Christmas for? And I wanted the Webster's Dictionary because I wanted to learn new words and make flashcards and learn new words that I've never heard of. So my grandma took me to Barnes and Noble and bought me the Webster's Dictionary, which I still have. And yeah, it's one of the things that I've always been um immersed in knowledge. I've always wanted to learn things. I've always wanted to know how things work and how things operate. Yes, I think I have a little bit of ADHD because my mind is always going 1,000 miles an hour and it's very difficult to shut my brain off. But I also find it a blessing because I'm able to focus on a lot of different things at once.
So, do you still have that Webster's dictionary?
I do, yes.
Um, I don't know if I know where a dictionary is in our house, but you used to always have to have one.
Yes, you did.
So, how did you end up in life coaching and public speaking? Was that intentional or was that accidental?
Actually, this is hilarious. So, I was riding with my Ironman race partner, Ryan Smoke, which will eventually be a podcast guest for us. And we were driving to get coffee on our weekly coffee crawl, as we y- call it. And he randomly blurts out, you know, you should be a motivational speaker. And I said, what the hell do I have to be motivational about? I am a college student that lives in a chair. What would that be motivational at all? And he said, right there, what you just said is motivational. He said, you're 19 years old, or 20 years old, and you're a college student and you're your dad just recently passed and you're not letting your disability or your things going on in your life kind of dissipate you from doing the things that you need to do. And I said, okay, I'll throw you a bone because I had decided to take a semester off of college that semester anyway due to emotional burnout. So I was like, um, I'll throw you a bone. I'll look up, public speaking classes and I'll just go to one and see if I like it, not thinking anything of it. So I go to my first meeting, which is October the 4th, 2017. I will remember that day for the rest of my life because that's the day that it changed my life. And you're probably thinking, "Oh, he fell in love with public speak public speaking right away." No. Um, so I walk into my first Toastmasters meeting and they asked me if I want to be a part of this introductory game where they give you a topic and you have 30 seconds to a minute to respond to a random question. And I said, can I go outside and kind of practice what I'm going to say? And they said, oh no, it's spare of the moment, like right off the cuff. And I said, oh crap. I said, okay, I'll play. And I don't even think I lasted 10 seconds, 15 seconds maybe. And what kept me going to Toastmasters was after that blunder of the introductory, little moment there, the constructive criticism is what kept me going. So, needless to say, I've I immersed myself in Toastmasters for the next 8 years where I served as a two-time area director for District 16 of Oklahoma and a three-time area director for District 16. And I served as president for multiple clubs in the 8 years that I've been in Toastmasters. I've taken a little bit of a break just because of some some other projects that I'm doing statewide and national with disability advocacy. So I'll be back in Toastmasters, you know, once my life gets a little less chaotic.
Right. That's super impressive for as young as you are. I
Yes.
mean, you are, um, just what? Are you 27?
I'll be 29 in 2 weeks.
29. So you've done all that, and you started that when you were 19?
About 20 years old, yes.
Let's talk about your degree in enterprise development. What did that teach you about people, not just systems?
Really, what it taught me and what I learned from my professors at Oklahoma State was, you know, business is a cutthroat enterprise. Whether you have a disability or not, if you don't come with a great idea and a great vision and a great plan, no matter how great the idea is, it's probably gonna be turned down 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7, maybe 80 times before you get that yes. And, I think it has to do a lot with my disability is because I was constantly in my life told, "Well, he's not gonna be able to do this," and I proved them wrong, and he's not gonna be able to do this, and I proved them wrong. So, honestly, me getting a degree in the business world was nothing out of the ordinary for me because I thrive on proving people wrong. Yeah, that's probably a little boastful, but honestly, that's the truest statement you'll probably hear from me is I love when people doubt me because I love proving them wrong.
Well, and I have a feeling that you're getting ready to prove a lot of people wrong in the next few months through this podcast. So, Let's talk about what values guide how you show up, especially in hard conversations.
Boy, that's a wonderful question. I really value communication and honesty. I'm really real with people. I don't I don't sugarcoat things because if you sugarcoat the real value of what you're trying to communicate, it takes away from the impact.
Right.
Yes, you know, I have a disability. Yes, there are difficult things that I'm gonna have to deal with in my life, you know, and what I try to teach people, in my time with partners and with my time with Oklahoma Land and, my time as a public speaker and a life coach is, anything in life worth having is hard. Yes, it may be a little harder for me because I sit in a chair, but that's my only life that I've known. I don't know anything other than that. So when I start, talking to families or individuals that have, a disability, I don't treat them any different because I don't want to be treated different. I want to be looked at as human as well. And that's the biggest thing is you want people with disabilities want to be treated as people. And that's the problem that we're seeing is they get treated as if they are not enough.
Yes. Treated as though they're less than human.
Yes. Or their life experience is maybe not like they're missing out on something just because they have a diagnosis. And, that's really sad that people have such a clouded mindset that, oh, this person's got cerebral palsy. He may never experience, you know, getting married or having children. I may decide that I don't want children, but that doesn't mean that if I don't find somebody that I can't experience that just because I have a diagnosis. We need to have people understand that when you have a clouded judgment like that, it really is disallowing yourself to experience the most out of life. And I'm not just talking about people with disabilities. I'm talking about, you know, what if the person with a clouded judgment has a child with a disability and then they have to change their mindset? Why not change their mindset before, you know, these actions happen? So therefore you can teach your child or other people that, words have power, man.
Yes. That kind of leads me into the next question, and that is, why does disability advocacy matter to you personally?
Absolutely. Because, you know, God has not given God has given me many things. You know, he's given me a mind and he's given me, respect for people. But as far as like physical gifts that I could use to get a job and create a life for myself, he hasn't given me very many. But he gave me one big mouthpiece. He gave me a voice for change. He gave me a voice to stand up, and honestly, my mind has given me things in my life that my legs could never give me. I'm gonna say that again because I say this a lot in my public speaking. My mind has given me things that my legs will never will. And that alone advocating that my journey has been difficult, but I have and will accomplish the things that I want to, not because I'm trying to brag or boast that I'm going to make it. No, because I am gonna make it because I have destined myself that I am not gonna be a statistic that lives below the poverty line of people with disabilities. Not that I think I'm better, but I want to show my brothers and sisters with disabilities that if you have a dream and something, and have the right people behind you and put the effort in and love in and passion in, you can conquer your dreams and have a career based on your ability, not your disability.
And that's really powerful. And that's a powerful example. I already see you setting that example for people. And I can't imagine how much greater that's going to be the bigger your platform gets.
I've always said, as a kid that I wanted to be on TV and I wanted to be, famous for, the right reasons. A lot of people become famous for the wrong reasons. I want to do it because and gain a platform so I can show people that disability advocacy is real. People with disabilities have dreams too. They want to achieve a career too. They want representation in the world too. And you know what? I would love someday if one of a child a child came up to me or came up to us and said, "Because of where the ramp ends, or because of your TikToks or Instagram or Facebook Live videos, my kid believes that they can achieve things because Bryce and Summer said they could."
That would be the end goal, wouldn't it?
Yes. And to be honest, that is why we are going to fight so hard to do this is because we're not going to stop until we achieve that goal.
Absolutely. That would be the ultimate goal. What do you wish more people understood about families and children with disabilities?
That it's not easy. That they think that, oh, well, they can afford all that, you know, that the state helps them, you know, afford. No, most of the things that kids or individuals need with a disability, insurance don't cover. And you have to have an out-of-pocket cost for that, and sometimes, you know, you're looking at several $1,000s. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Without insure with insurance with insurance, my seat cushion that I am currently sitting on is $300.
That's what
Yeah.
you pay or what the
Yes,
insurance pays.
that is what I pay after insurance.
That's seems absolutely insane to me.
And you might have to wait a month, 2 months, maybe 3 months to have insurance approve it.
And you probably have to have the right person submit it,
Correct.
and it may need to be resubmitted over and over
Oh,
again.
it's gonna be denied at least once.
Yeah, yeah. I've worked in medical offices, and so I've seen that part of it, and then also as a parent, and to have that game. It's almost like a game.
Oh, it is, because the insurance companies are gonna get theirs. The disability equipment, company, they're gonna get their money. Oh, yeah, they're gonna get their money first. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm not bashing those companies. I'm not. I'm just telling you how it is because
Yeah.
this podcast is the explicit truth. We're gonna be talking about things that are very uncomfortable, that are real, and if you're living on y- if you're a person with a disability that's living on a monthly disability check, for example, let's say, that $300 of that $900 or whatever that an individual gets. Let's call her Annie. Let's call her Annie for, you know, example. You know, that's a big chunk of that $900 that that individual has to dish out, that just because they need a new cushion, and you can't not have it,
Right.
because then you deal with pressure sores and all kind of different crap that you don't want.
What's the example income that you gave? Say they make
$900 a month is the standard, d SSDI, uh, allotment check. Usually, it's about $900 a month. Might be more, might be less, depending on the person.
so then you would have $600 to live off for the rest of the month, pay all your bills with, just so you have a
I mean,
cushion,
there's
like you
no
said, that it's not an option to have that.
right. And that's why I get so frustrated, is because I see my brothers and sisters with disabilities not being able to have a career full time, because they get penalized, because if they have a full-time career or work too many hours, they lose their benefits. And who's going to lose that guaranteed money, Summer? Nobody is.
Right.
So people with disabilities are afraid of going to work full time, is because they'll lose their benefits.
They have a lot more to lose than gain by working full time,
1000%.
because, it's almost like the system has set people up with disabilities that to not work full time, but then they get judged and criticized for not working full time.
Right. It's almost like they're setting us up to fail, to keep us in that little box. You know, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna just keep them over here
And I
because,
and I don't understand who gains anything by that.
you know, I think a lot of it is, and I've spoke about this at public speaking events, and I spoke at Visit Partners, is, you know, it would it would mean that people would have to change their mindset, and but people lower the standards for people with disabilities, because they're they believe in a lot of instances that they can't contribute to society because of their ailments. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that there's not some people with disabilities that, don't wanna work or don't wanna contribute to society, and that's fine. But there's a lot of individuals that I know personally, and I'm sure that you know, that would love to have a full-time career and don't. I'm
That
sure that when
it means a lot to some people to have some place to go and to work regardless of what some
where it
people
is.
where it is. And um our government is set up to kind of hold people back from doing that.
Right.
Let's go into how would you describe our dynamic as co-host?
Oh boy. I mean, that would really just have to go into briefly on how we met. So, Summer and I met in the 2024 class of Oklahoma Partners in Policymaking. And really, to be honest, when I joined Partners in Policymaking, I was really not looking to make really friends. I was there to, you know, just share my story and just be vulnerable and, learn as much as I could. If I made friends along the way, cool. But my sole objective was to learn as much as I could about disability and how to further, you know, become a better advocate. And to be honest, I'm still thankful that a lot of us in the partners in policymaking family have really, you know, gotten so close from essentially day one.
Yeah, we really
And we
became like a family.
yeah, well, yeah, and and we stayed in contact through, you know, Facebook and different things like that, and I saw that you were posting rule reels of Julia, and I said, "Hmm, I really, really like this." And, you and I kinda both said at the same time, "Why don't we collaborate?" There's nothing out here that we know of somebody with a disability and somebody with, you know, parental experience and able-bodied experience collaborating together in some form. And honestly, Summer, I think this is such a unique, beautiful collaboration because I mean, there we have 3 sides. We You have the able-bodied experience, you have the parent and advocator side of a child with a disability, and I have the lived experience side. So, you guys will get different layers every episode and different layers from each guest because we have so many attributes and things that we can attack from that will really diversify this podcast and social media postings.
I had you on my mind. Well, the past several months, I've been thinking, really the past year, I was had a podcast in mind, but I didn't want to do just a podcast with just me. And I always wanted to have somebody represented with lived experience because I felt like that was really important. And
Right.
you were top on my mind. And I was kind of like, okay, after the first of the year, I'm going to really I'm gonna start contacting people, and you were the first one I was gonna but before I had the chance to contact you, you messaged me and said, "Hey, let's collab." And I thought, "Yeah, we need to do a podcast."
I feel like it was really it was divine intervention. Like
I
we
agree.
both had this idea in our minds um that we wanted to, contribute to the community, in different facets. But for us to collaborate together, I mean, it's one thing to try and get it on your own, but, like, in this community, in this space, trying to, you know, get your voice out there alone is really difficult, but when you have a tag team partner and somebody that's just as invested as you in sitting in the suck, and figuring out, how do we make this better? I would much rather, you know, be able to, you know, tag team with my co-host and be like, these are the issues that we want to tackle. We want to tackle social media. We want to tackle, advocacy. We want to tackle, you know, anything that you guys want to see, you know, contact us, your ideas, and we would love to possibly create an episode on what you would like to see from us because we are a podcast for the people and we want to represent the people.
Absolutely, and we want people to send in some questions too. Anybody that has questions for you or for me or for both of us, um, we'll have a link where they can submit those
And
questions
we
also.
we would love to do like a weekly or monthly ask Summer and Bryce roundtable of like what are common misconceptions of disability, and we would love to ask your questions you know, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Like, we would rather you ask questions than assume. We're not going to get offended if you come correctly.
Right. Exactly. We want those We want those questions asked and we want to have those conversations as long as they're respectful.
because knowledge is power. If you don't have the knowledge, then you're not going to have the power. So if you genuinely don't know about something or want to know about a diagnosis or learn more about cerebral palsy or learn more about Down syndrome or how to advocate as a parent with a child with a disability, please ask us. And if we don't know the answer, we have enough, you know, people in our arsenal that we can find you the answer. But as co-hosts, we are gonna do our due diligence to really find you that answer. We're on your side.
We are 100% on your side. So, Bryce, when someone finishes an episode, what do you hope that they feel or leave feeling?
Oh, man, this is powerful. I want them to feel that they are a part of a family, and I mean that. The disability community, for it to really achieve what it needs to do, is we all need to come together. We all need to collaborate and figure out how do we best serve our individuals with disability? How do we best serve the parents? How do we give them knowledge? How do we, you know, tighten up their arsenal and give them the resources and the tools needed to become better advocates and better parents and teach them how to help their child advocate. I want them to feel like they're not alone. Because there's going to be times on this podcast where there's going to be tears, there's going to be frustration, and there's going to be difficult topics. But I want people to feel safe enough to come on and share those stories. And we can sit in the pain with them and say, I've been there.
Yeah, I like that. Sit in the pain with them. That's powerful and that means so much in the moment when you're hurting.
Yes.
So, if you can leave listeners with one thought or one question today, what would it be?
That I'm just a normal 28-year-old man that lives with cerebral palsy that is trying to create a life for himself. Disab- Cerebral palsy is not what I am or who I am. It's a part of me. Get to know the person behind the disability, and I guarantee your perspective on disability might change.
In 1 year from now, what do you hope to see this podcast look
You know,
looking like?
I really hope in a year that this becomes a platform that people can come, whether you're a parent, whether you're an educator, whether you're a policymaker, whether you're an advocate, it doesn't matter where your background is, you are welcome here. I want this to be a space where people can come and be their authentic self and understand that this is a safe place for you to learn, for you to communicate, and feel seen.
Awesome. I agree 100%. Um, that's my goal too, and, um, thank you, Bryce, today for letting me kinda practice my interview skills, and so we can learn a little bit more about you today, and I thank all our listeners for joining us today at Where the Ramp Ends, and Bryce, you wanna sign us off?
For where the ramp ends, I'm Bryce.
And I'm Summer.
This is where the ramp ends and where your journey begins. Till next time.